Less Taken contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Less Taken.
January 5th, 1975. 1993 Dice Road, Merrill, Michigan. The police have been circling the Pomeraning family for months. Harold Pomeraning, his wife, and 2 sons can hardly believe what they're seeing. Then again, this constant and somewhat invasive surveillance is far from the worst thing that's been happening over the course of this last year. For a rural area such as where the Pomeraning family lives, this kind of perpetual police activity is unheard of. What could be going on to merit this much attention from the local authorities? The police have been patrolling the area, interviewing family members and neighbors, and even taking shifts staying inside of the residence with the family. Page upon page, reports of loud banging, electrical issues, and suspected poltergeist-like activity have piled up on their desk. The police don't know whether it's harassment, a delinquent kid, or hell, even ghosts, but it's certainly stolen their attention. The worst of it is, there have been numerous officers at the Pomeraning residence, and they too have deposited copious amounts of corroborating reports. Sergeant Joseph Hahn left this morning around 6 a.m., and while he mentioned a few oddities, overall, he didn't recount much unusual activity in or outside of the house, or even along the street. More officers are expected to arrive later in the afternoon to continue surveying Dice Road, but with any luck, the cycle will just repeat over and over until the family finally surrenders and moves out of the house. Or it burns itself down with them inside of it. Given all the things that Harold's seen lately, it could really go either way. At least for now, it seems like he and his family have a moment of tranquility, composure at the very least. Harold is relaxing in the living room, thumbing through a newspaper while occasionally considering the television set across from him. His wife is in the kitchen, tending to something, he's not sure what, and the boys are elsewhere. Harold appreciates that this moment is rare amongst the usual relentless onslaught of loud banging noises, disembodied whispers, unexplainable drafts, and so on. Of course, such a moment as this is sure to be short-lived. 1:50 p.m., the middle of a nippy winter day. Harold and the rest of his family hear a loud banging sound unlike any other that they've heard before. This is some kind of explosion. 8 minutes later, and there's another explosion, just as loud and threatening as the first. The entire family huddles together in the living room, the young boy clutching onto his mother, tears strewn down both of their faces. 2:07 p.m., and there's a third explosion, but it's far from the last.
Do you have a copy?
Go for Han.
Have you made it back over to the Pomeraning house yet?
After receiving call after call about loud explosions coming from somewhere near the back east end of the Pomeraning residence, Sergeant Han drives back over to the house. Driving to this house and discussing strange noises in the middle of the night with Harold and the rest of his family has nearly become a permanent part of his daily routine. But after month and month of running around in circles with these stories, Sergeant Han may have lost a bit of his enthusiasm and a sliver of his patience. He'll admit, and even go on to report, that on the nights he spent either inside of the house or around the property, there's been quite a few times when he's gotten the creeps. He's heard some of the very same sounds Harold and his family have. He's caught unusual happenings around the unlit hallways in the middle of the night. Nothing has ever fully convinced him that the police force is dealing with real-life ghosts, though. On this evening, he's not too surprised, or even entertained by, a tale of loud explosions. Sure, why not? What is surprising, however, is the fact that they're taking place in the middle of the day. When Ton arrives at the Pomeraning residence, he's quickly welcomed over to discuss the most recent, unexplainable happenings. Harold has plenty to say once the follow-up report officially begins. Harold's words soon fade into the background when Han feels what might be described as a cool mist. A gust brushes by his side. Trying to brush it off, Han continues jotting down as much of Harold's words as he can. Then, he feels it again. But this time, it's much stronger. It's not just some breeze or rogue mist. There's an invisible force pressing against them. Suddenly, that same invisible force plows forward, an invisible stiff arm, launching Han off of his feet and slamming him into the ground. Sergeant Han has been on the police force for years. He's been to this house a few dozen times by now. He even used to be an army ranger. Yet this might be the very first time that he's felt such fear. You're listening to Dice Road Part 1, the latest episode of Less Taken, Season 3. In this episode, we explore the haunting real-life accounts of the Pomeraning family, who live a peaceful life until one day in 1974, when it all changes. In Part 1, we'll cover the early disturbances, police and witness accounts, paranormal escalation, and much more. There's even an alleged witch involved. Be sure to stick around and check it out and tell a friend. It's a terrific tale as we head into the spooky season. And this will also serve as the first installment of our annual Halloween episode. Also be sure to let us know what you think of the show. Please rate, review, subscribe, and tell a friend about Less Taken. Every little bit helps. Discover even more and check out our merch at lesstakenpod.com. Lastly, be sure to follow us before we follow you on Facebook and Instagram under the handle @lesstakenpod. I'm CM Humphreys, and this is Less Taken, real-life horror stories from the Midwest. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy Dice Road Part 1. They have a new neighbor. Harold Pomeraning builds the house along Dice Road in 1951. Soon after, he and his wife Mabel settle in and begin a family with 2 sons, Dwayne and Terry. There's nothing unusual about their tale until one fateful day in 1974. There's a new neighbor in town which is a fairly big deal for a place with a population around 700. For whatever reason, this new neighbor is already at their doorstep. Harold and his family suspect the neighbor is trying to be polite and introduce herself, but that can't be further from the case. He saw the woman move into the house with a man, but he's nowhere to be found at the moment. It's just her at their doorstep. Harold's ready to put on a big cheese grin and pretend he's excited to have a new neighbor. But then, he opens the door. With hardly any small talk, the woman asks if the Pomeraning family is planning on moving out anytime soon. "Excuse me?" Harold asked. There's no way he heard that correctly. The woman says,
I was wondering if you might be interested in selling your home. To me.
"No," Harold replies. "I actually built this house and I couldn't imagine selling it anytime soon to you." Who is this woman? A realtor? She just moved in. Why would she want another house? Why their house? A few months pass by, and life for the Pomeraning family is about the status quo for them. Everything's calm, normal. It's a peaceful life in a small, quiet Midwestern town. But then, Harold heads to the front door, where he hears someone continue to knock, pound on it. He sighs the moment he realizes who's standing on their porch. It's the same woman from across the street. This time, she's not forcing a smile. She looks distraught, preoccupied. Again, she asks Harold and his family if they plan on moving out anytime soon, and if they'd be interested in selling their home to her. "Look," Harold says, "I already said that we weren't interested."
I really think you should consider selling your home to me.
The woman interjects. She wants him to consider this offer and what it might bring to their family. Maybe they could find a better, bigger house somewhere else. Maybe they could have a little money left over and alleviate a few financial stressors. Maybe they're tired of stepping out of their back door and seeing only endless fields. Sorry, but no," Harold says.
Why won't you sell your home to me?
The woman asks, her temper starting to flare. She's persistent, relentless. No matter what Harold says to her, no matter how long-winded, short, or stern of an answer he gives her, the woman just won't walk away. It's like she's not going to leave until he either agrees to sell her the house, or he's forced to call the authorities and have her removed from the property. Harold's really hoping she'll just give up and cross the street, back to her own home, the one she just bought. "We have no interest in selling this house anytime soon, if ever," Harold says. "What do you need this house for anyway? Didn't you just move into the one across the street?"
Never mind what I'm doing.
The woman says.
Just tell me whenever you change your mind.
"Sure," Harold mutters, as the woman finally turns around and heads back home. The Pomeraning family aren't the only ones to cross paths with the new neighbor. It's just usually the same woman that wants the Pomeraning house. There's a rumor going around Merrill, just about anywhere you could visit. It's that there's something off about the new lady in town, but no one can quite put a finger on it. A family friend of the Pomeranings claim the woman keeps appearing around their home at all hours of the day and night. She never says anything. She never touches anything, steals, or does any real damage. She just stands there, looking at the house, occasionally wavering in the wind, as though dancing. Shortly after, the neighbors step outside to discover 3 X's above their garage door. These are iron letters, and they have no idea what they mean. Is it some kind of simple decoration or even a prank? Is it a threat? Another neighbor claims they've seen the woman prowling around Dice Road late into the night and early into the morning. From what they've gathered, the woman frequents the cemetery, especially during dark, stormy nights. For what purpose? No one seems to know. What really captures everyone's imagination, though, are the parties. Not too far away from the Pomeraning residence, Roy puts down his newspaper when he hears what sounds like a large group of people chanting late at night. He walks over to his living room window and separates the curtains just enough for him to peer across the street. While most of the homes around Dice Road are unlit, aside from the occasional porch light, the house across from the Pomeraning residence has most of their lights on around the back end of their property, though they mostly come through as silhouettes. Roy spots over a dozen people crammed into the back of the house, swaying in front of one of the windows. There's no music blaring or people running around and screaming. They're all just chanting something he can't quite discern, and dancing. That's the only way he can describe how they move. Dancing. The large swaths of darkly clad individuals piling up at the new neighbor's house, chanting, dancing, reading from nondescript leather books. This is only the first of what will become a weekly routine that haunts the entire neighborhood. While the Pomeraning family and Roy avoid any interactions with the new neighbors, not everyone around Dice Road is so timid, not at first at least. Another couple, friends of the Pomeranings, take it upon themselves to befriend the new neighbors and make them more comfortable with their new surroundings. Plus, it's not always easy meeting new people in a new town, so it might just be nice for them to have a friend or two. The new neighbors are reluctant, but eventually come around to spending time with the couple. As many others are starting to learn, this will turn out to be a mistake. Usually whenever someone is new around town, they're a little reserved at first, shy. They make small talk and avoid sharing too much personal information right off the bat. Not this new neighbor. With her, it's hello, and then I have this fairly dark view on life and have dozens of friends that think very much the same way. The woman doesn't waste any time telling the wife that she's been over to the Pomeraning residence a fair number of times, pleading with them to sell the house, but the family has always turned her down. She tells the wife that it infuriates her. She needs that damn house. The wife doesn't have the heart to ask the woman why. And then, the new neighbor tells the wife something she doesn't see coming. The new neighbor informs her that she's an ordained witch. Dwayne Pomeraning, the eldest son, steps out of the house with one hand quickly shielding his eyes from the morning sun. He walks down the driveway toward the mailbox, a routine that he's carried out countless times. Today, though, he doesn't feel quite right. He woke up okay, but now he's a little disoriented. He's in a haze as he reaches the end of the driveway. Dwayne reaches the mailbox and opens it, pulling out a few letters and a newspaper. None of it's addressed to him, and all the rest seems excruciatingly boring. As he turns to head back, his eyes are drawn to the house across the street. It's an old, weathered structure with darkened windows. The house seems to exude an aura of mystery. Dwayne feels an inexplicable pull towards it, as if the house itself is calling to him. He stands there, clutching the mail, his heart beating faster. He remembers the story his parents told him about the strange neighbor, especially the woman, and the eerie events that have been happening on their road. Despite these warnings, curiosity gets the better of Dwayne. He takes a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Dwayne glances back at his own house, then back at the neighbor's. He can't shake the feeling that he needs to know more. Slowly, almost as if in a trance, he starts walking across the street towards the neighbor's house. It's been 3 hours since Dwayne went out to get the mail, and he hasn't returned. Harold and Mabel Pomeraning exchange worried glances, their anxiety mounting with each passing minute. Suddenly, the front door creaks open, and Dwayne stumbles inside. His face is pale, his eyes wide and vacant. He moves slowly, almost mechanically, his body stiff and unresponsive. Harold rushes to his side, gripping his shoulders. "Dwayne, where have you been?" Harold's voice is filled with concern. Dwayne doesn't respond immediately. He stands there, swaying slightly, his gaze unfocused. I went to the house," Dwayne mutters. "The neighbor's house. The witch's house. There were candles and symbols everywhere." Mabel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She then asked what he saw. Dwayne's eyes flicker with a brief spark of fear. "Candles burning, symbols on walls, on books." Before he can say more, his body convulses violently. He collapses to the floor, his limbs jerking uncontrollably. Harold and Mabel scream, rushing to his side as he experiences a grand mal seizure. The room is filled with chaos and panic, the eerie glow of the neighbor's house still fresh in their minds. Dwayne stands at the edge of the driveway, mesmerized by the mere sight of the witch's house. His legs carry him away, across Dice Road, as though making decisions on their own. He can't stop himself. The lights are dim. There are candles burning bright in nearly every corner of every room the witch leads him through. Their light and astigmatism, crackling starbursts leaving blind spots in his vision as they pass them by. Further disoriented, Dwayne stumbles from time to time. The walls all seem to be slanted. Same with the floor. The witch turns into the kitchen, and within what feels like seconds, she offers some kind of drink to Dwayne. He probably shouldn't accept it, but maybe this is just the sort of thing he needs to settle his nerves. Again, his limbs thinking on their own, Dwayne reaches across the counter, grabs the cup, and sips down every last drop. Nothing gets better. Dwayne is no calmer than he started out, and if anything, his anxiety is through the roof. The room around him begins to spin, with him occasionally catching a glimpse of the witch's distorted face as every last detail and color swirls around him. Dwayne might faint at any moment, yet somehow he is still standing. And he listens as the witch tells Dwayne that he needs a haircut. This can't be true. He got one not too long ago, and his hair should still be fine. Nevertheless, the witch walks over and sets him back in a chair. He shakes his head, but the witch still pulls out a pair of shears. From where? He's not too sure. In one swift snip, the witch cuts off a lock of Dwayne's hair and holds it high above her head. The witch turns toward Dwayne and smiles. That grin continues to spread, opening wider and wider. She closes her eyes and swallows the hair whole. July 9th, 1974. Tomorrow's the start of the local Blueberry Festival, and the Pomeraning family isn't going to miss it for the world. Without much disagreement, Harold, Mabel, and even the boys clean up for the evening and head to their respective bedrooms. An early morning calls for an early night. But just as they're drifting off to sleep, the sound of glass shattering fills the house. All of them jump to their feet and converge into the hallway. Harold steps out in front and urges them to return to their rooms while he goes to inspect whatever is causing all the commotion. And hopefully, he can snag some kind of equalizer along the way, just in case it's some kind of burglar or a random night prowler. Harold's shocked when he arrives in the living room. Glass shards are scattered across the carpet, and the front window is shattered. There's a center of impact, which gives him the idea that someone must have thrown something at their window. However, Harold can't find anything. There's not a single object out of place. He doesn't see anything like a metal pipe or a brick or even a large stone. It could just be a freak incident. Maybe it has something to do with the warmer weather. Regardless, Harold thinks the best decision is to call the police. few local cops investigate the call from Harold and find themselves standing dumbstruck in the Pomeraning living room. They didn't see anyone else around the property when they arrived, but they do see the shattered window. They see the glass littered across the carpet. What they don't see is a culprit or even an object that caused the damage in the first place. The officers inspect the home and do a few laps around Dice Road, but they end up empty-handed. They're not too sure what to tell the Pomeraning family. Obviously, something broke their window, but there's no sign of any foul play. Either it's a freak accident, or someone inside of the house is trying to pull a rather expensive and dangerous prank. They wish the Pomeraning family a good night and encourage them to reach out should anything else unusual happen. And it certainly does. It's a familiar scene in the Pomeraning household. Harold is leaning back in a living room chair, reading the newspaper. Mabel tidies up a few areas of the house, especially around the kitchen and living room, before taking a moment to relax for herself. And the boys should be picking up after themselves and getting ready to call it a night. Harold lowers the newspaper and surveys the room. He knows he just heard someone knocking, or something, a moment ago. To be frank, it sounded like someone was pounding on the actual house instead of the door. There it is again. But Harold's fairly certain the sound is coming from the back of the house. He places the newspaper off to the side, stands up, and starts making his way for the back door. He hopes that when he opens it, there's no one there. Ensuring his family's safety is priority number one, but in the event he actually meets a prowler, Harold's not too sure what he would do. Opening the door halfway, Harold slides outside into the warm summer night. There's a light breeze, but other than that, the night is almost silent. He studies what he can in every direction, but there's nothing there. Not even a ravenous raccoon. After a few minutes, Harold heads back inside and closes the back door. He knows something hit the side of the house, but the way it was so rhythmical, it must have been another human doing it. Yet, there's no sign of anyone. Right when Harold and his family are about to surrender and shrug off the entire ordeal, the loud banging sound returns. But this time, the banging doesn't sound like it's coming from outside. It sounds like it's coming from within the walls. To be continued next time on Less Taken. Thank you for checking out Dice Road Part 1, the first installment of Less Taken Season 3's Halloween special. If you're looking for more explosions, don't worry, they'll show up soon. In the meantime, please let us know what you think of Dice Road Part 1 or any of our stories by leaving a fair rating and review wherever you're listening. If you truly enjoy Less Taken, please subscribe with downloads on and tell a friend. It all truly helps. You can also leave reviews, support the show, join our street team, and even suggest your own ideas for future episodes of Less Taken by visiting our official website, lesstakenpod.com. There, you'll also find artwork, additional media, merch, and more. If swag's your thing, be sure to check out this year's Halloween hoodie, as well as a BOGO 15% off deal we have running on select items. Follow us before we follow you on Facebook and Instagram under the handle @lesstakenpod. A quick note on our storytelling. While we do our best to stick to the facts, we sometimes take creative liberties to maintain narrative cohesiveness. I'm Sam Humphreys, and this is Less Taken, real-life horror stories from the Midwest. Once again, thanks for listening, and I hope you join us next Wednesday for a preview of Dice Road Part 2.